the summary, you can leave, actually. So, 2 Chronicles 26 has a wonderful story. And I happened to read that chapter because I was going through the book of Isaiah, chapter 6, and it was talking about the Isaiah's vision of heaven, right? He sees God and he falls flat. And he says, Lord, I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live among men of unclean lips. And that, I thought that was an awesome thought, because I think I can relate that to myself, right? We live in a culture and we live among men, among people with unclean lips. But, it said it was during the days of Uzziah, the king, that these things happened. And then I went to look up on the story of this guy. And when you look at his story, he was 16 years old, and I don't know how many of you know that Jonathan is my son. He just turned 19. So younger than Jonathan was Uzziah when he became a king. Yet, God blessed him so much that he was able to rule for 52 years. 52 years to rule as a king. When you start at 16, and you're like, you retired as a king, right, almost. Amazing, amazing story. But he was able to do that, I believe, is because in verse 5 he says, he set himself to seek God in the days of Zechariah, who instructed him in the fear of God, and as long as he sought the Lord, God made him prosper. And right away, the writer is trying to give you a story there. As long as he sought the Lord, right? And you may think, hey, what happened to this guy? What happened? When did he stop seeking the Lord? When did he stop fearing God? When did he stop being humble? And eventually, when did he stop being successful and prosperous? And when did he stop ruling, right? When did his blessing stop? So when you look at that, it happened when his mentor, his pastor, Zechariah, died. And then there was nobody to counsel him. And then he thought that he was the guy who was on top of the world. And he was actually on top of the world. You know why? Because look at the kind of things that he invented in those days, right? In 2 Chronicles 26:15, he says, in Jerusalem, he built machines invented by skillful men to be in the towers and corners to shoot arrows and great stones, and his fame spread far, for he was marvelously helped till he was strong. Again, the writer is trying to give up a story here. Till he was strong. So there was a time when he became weak. And the reason why he became weak, comes up after these verses in the same chapter, where he says that let's turn to 2 Chronicles, chapter 26. And verse 16, right? The verse right after this, right? But when he was strong, he grew proud to his destruction. For he was unfaithful to the Lord his God, and entered the temple of the Lord to burn incense on the temple altar of the incense. But Azariah the priest went in after him with 8 priests of the Lord who were with men of valor, and they withstood King Uzziah and said to him, it is not for you, O King Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord, but for the priests, the sons of Aaron, who are consecrated to burn incense. Go out of the sanctuary, for you have done wrong, and it will bring you no honor from the Lord your God. You see that? He was trying to do something that he was not supposed to do. And right away, God sends again a counselor, again somebody to guide him and warn him and caution him. And this man, he says, you're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be doing these things. This is consecrated for the sons of Aaron, for the royal priesthood. You're a king. You're not a priest, my friend. but he doesn't listen to that advice. That I think that's one of the things that happens, right? God sends sometimes when we are going through life's battles or life's pride moments. God, in His grace, He sends us people to caution us, to warn us. But I guess the spirit of pride, is so haughty that you think that you cannot be told at all by anybody. Because you become a person that does not listen, who does not have an ear to hear, right? And God's word in the same chapter, Isaiah 6 says, these people have ears, but they don't hear. They have eyes, but they don't see. They cannot see. What do you mean they can't see? They can see, but what they cannot see is their own life. There's a mirror that shows reflection of the face, but you cannot see the spots on your face. That's what pride does to you. That's exactly what pride does to you, right? So when you look at verse 16, it says, when he was strong, he was proud to his destruction. Right? And we have heard as a proverb, as a saying, that pride goes before a fall, right? Destruction follows. Wherever there is pride, destruction follows. And then I stepped upon another story of a man, a great man, right, who was almost like the absolute monarch of the whole world during that time of Daniel. Name was Nebuchadnezzar. I think that's the only thing funny about this guy is the name, except that everything is serious about him, right? He was the most powerful king in all the earth. The most powerful king. And in the verse that precedes this, it says, he was comfortable, right, and prosperous, and then all of a sudden, he was terrified and afraid because of a dream. And in that dream, what he dreams is, he dreams about a huge tree that is growing and growing and growing, and it touches heaven. And then the tree is so comfortable at that spot that it was the tallest tree in the whole world. And at that time, God looks upon the tree and he says, you know what, I'm going to cut you down. Not cut you down and uproot you from your roots, but I'll cut you down till the end of the ground, and I'll leave the root over there. The stump we will leave. And then he's so terrified. I don't get what is so terrified about this, this dream of a tree. And you're not seeing dragons or demons. You're just seeing a tree that's growing up. And there's a guy who's saying, I'm going to cut you down. Maybe the tree was, occupying a lot of space. You don't know. But what's so terrifying about it? I guess what's terrifying about it is you don't know when you are so comfortable, when you are in such a prosperous place, when you're so successful, what is this about cutting down, right? You and I can relate to cutting down. You and I live in a world where they are cutting down our jobs day after day. You never know. If I go to my work, sometimes I've gone, my company has gone through so many layoffs, and God has protected me from, each one of them for the past 5 years. And it's a miracle in its own, because I'm not the smartest guy, right, in my team. In a team of 42 people, right, I'm the only guy left in India, in the US. The whole team has been outshored to India. But why? Where does the protection come from? It's not because I'm smart. It's because the Lord is on my side. Because if He is on your side, nobody can stand before you, right? But as a miracle or a magic, what used to happen before every layoff was, I used to be given an application to deploy or to support that nobody used to take up, right? And this used to exactly happen 6 months before the layoff, right? For example, the layoff is happening in March. My manager would give me an application in October, right? Just 6 months before that, every time. And then that small application, by the end of the year, which is December, that small application, that unimportant application that nobody was willing to take up and support, that would become the most important application. I don't know why. I don't know how. It would become the most priority application. And then everybody is saying, hey, who supports this? You know what? Coming layoff, make sure that this guy is there, because we need this guy to support that application. Every layoff, it used to happen. And God has sustained me, right? But my point is, when we have pride in our heart, we don't see God's hand in everything that goes on with our life. You see? That's the only problem. We don't have an attitude of gratitude. Somebody who is thankful for everything that you have in your life will never be proud. I think that is one vaccination for you to not be proud. A vaccination of a full shot of gratefulness, right? An inoculation of gratefulness that we need to have on a daily basis. We need to be reminded that we don't deserve, like he was saying, we are not entitled for that. We don't deserve it, but it's only because God gave it to us that we are still the way we are, right? I'll get to that in a moment. But when he looks at the dream, he is so terrified. He is so afraid. And then the first thing that he does not call Daniel first. You know why? Daniel is a guy who tells you on the face. He goes to everybody else and he says, hey, can you tell me what the interpretation is? Can you tell me what the dream is? Nobody can say that. And then he calls Daniel. You see that? That's how pride people work. They don't want anybody to tell you on their face, right? So Daniel comes and says, Daniel, first he listens to this dream and he says, oh my goodness, I wish it wasn't you. So passionate. I wish it wasn't you, my king. And then he says, the tree you saw, which grew and became strong so that it reached the top of heaven and is visible to the end of the whole earth, whose leaves were beautiful and its fruit abundant, and which was food for all, under which beasts of the field found shade, and in whose branches the birds of the heaven lived. It is you, O king, you are the one, you are the tree that has grew to heaven. Your greatness has grown and reaches to heaven, and your dominions to the ends of the earth. And because the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump of its roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze in the tender grass of the field, and let him be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field, till 7 periods of time pass over him. That could mean about 7 months. That could mean 7 months, 7 seasons, which is a year and a half. This is the interpretation of king. It is a decree of the Most High, which has come upon my Lord the King. You thought you were the Most High, O King? There is somebody who is above you. There's somebody who has created this whole world. There's somebody who owns the whole world. You think you own this world? No, not you. There is this, O king, it is a decree of the Most High. This is a command from the Most High, which has come upon you, my Lord the King, that you shall be driven among men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. You shall be made to eat grass like an ox, and you shall be wet with the dew of heaven, and 7 periods of time shall pass over you, till you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men, and he gives to whom he will. He gives to whom he will. You see, I read about this man named Howard Hughes, right? Howard Hughes, the way you say it. He was one of the richest guys in the then, he died in 1976, I believe, right? So he was one of the richest guys. His net worth was $536 million in the 70s, which equals to 3.8 billion of today. Right? He was a billionaire. But the problem with him was, when he died, there was one major problem. Hughes had no direct descendants or immediate family, and he did not leave behind a will. You see? I mean, you wish you were his son or daughter, right? But He did not even leave behind a will. Such a great guy, right? I'll read a few things about him. He was an American business magnate, investor, record-setting pilot, engineer, film director, philanthropist, known during his lifetime as one of the most financially successful individuals in the entire world. Entire world. Right? He did not know what to do with his life. Just wasted. He died. He died, and we do not even know if he realized who his maker was. But every life that is lived and dead without knowing its maker is a life of a life that is like the King Uzziah or like Nebuchadnezzar, right? But in these two stories, there is a contrast that I would like to bring, and there is an argument that I want to take over today. So let's see. Here in verse 29 and 30, he says, at the end of the 12 months, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace, right? And the king answered and said, is not this great Babylon which I have built with my mighty power as a royal residence and for the glory of my majesty? That's all he said. That's all he said. And I would give him that liberty to speak like that. You know why? Because this hanging gardens was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Then in those days, to build something like this, they say that the area, the square feet of Babylon was even bigger than New York City during that times. And these were like skyscrapers going up to the heaven where it was filled with greenery, right? Imagine a concrete jungle like New York looking green, It's a green jungle in those days. It was not concrete. I mean, that was a beauty to behold. And he was such a mighty king that he was not like one of those kings who would be in the palace giving the directions on the phone, right? Hey, you got to fight over there, you got to fight. No, he would be in the battle. He would be fighting on ground. He was such a mighty king. There was everything for this guy to boast, I would say. But the problem is when you don't realize that there's a God above you, that's where the problem arises. When you don't realize that you yourself were made by somebody else and you yourself are controlled by somebody else, you are under somebody, that's where we have a problem. And that's exactly what happened. Even why the word says in, I guess, 31, verse 31, I think, of Daniel. And you shall be driven, verse 31. While the words were still in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you. You see that? While the words were still in his mouth, he was still saying this. And the Lord said, the kingdom is taken away from you. You are going to be a beast in the field. The rain would fall and you wouldn't even have 2 hands to put up an umbrella. You see that? Not even 2 hands. You're crawling on the ground like an animal. Me? An animal? What are you talking? I'm the king. I'm the most high. Can this happen to a king that is the absolute monarch of that century? Can it happen? And I guess it does, because this is historically true. Nobody can deny the existence of this the king and as well as the hanging gardens of Babylon. Nobody can deny that. It's historically true, right? And then I think the lesson that we have today is that no matter what we have in this world, no matter what we gain, whatever my accomplishment is, unless it is seasoned with gratitude on top of that, I think that accomplishment will never bring glory to God. You see that? While the words were still in the king's mouth, fell a voice from heaven. And then verse 33, immediately the word was fulfilled against Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from among men and ate grass like an ox. And Daniel, when Daniel gave the interpretation of the dream, you see what Daniel said was, I plead with you, O king, that you would straighten your ways, that you would become humble, right? He cautions him, unless you leave this character of pride in you, God is going to send you into the jungle, right? You are going to be crawling over the ground. And between the words of Daniel, between the counsel of Daniel, advice of Daniel, and this happening, it took 12 months. 12 months, this guy was okay. That message of being humble worked with him for 12 months. Then all of a sudden, he was on the top of the palace, and those words proceeded from his heart, right? I have a point to make about that. But why does that happen, right? Why does that happen? You know, you and I could be going to church and, doing all the right things. Yet, is there a chance that I am filled with pride? Is there even an opportunity that pride can get into my heart? Here are a few things, right? C.S. Lewis said, pride is spiritual cancer. It eats up the very possibility of love or contentment or even common sense. Abraham Lincoln said, nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him some power. Pride is hungry for attention, respect, and worship in all its forms. Sin, Dorothy Sayers says, sin is a deep interior dislocation of the soul. And the point that I would like to make is that this is internal. You know, can you tell a man if he is proud or humble by his looks? Sometimes you can, right? But most of the times you cannot, right? Because it's in the heart. It's deep inside. And I've heard about a story about a pastor who had a small backyard, right? And there was a small place where they could do some grow some plants. And the wife said, "Can we put some strawberry seeds so that we can make use of the ground that's in the backyard?" And he said, "Surely, honey." And then they went to Home Depot, got some seeds, and they put the seeds. And then what happened after a few months was the plants started growing, right? And then, along with the strawberry plant, there were weeds that were growing around it. And the wife asked, "Honey, did you by mistake get seeds for weeds?" And the guy goes, "Nobody buys seeds for weeds. I just got seeds for strawberries." And my question to you is, how did the weeds grow? When the guy did not plant seeds of weeds. And the answer is, the seed was already there. What was it waiting for? It was waiting for water. The moment the guys they started watering that area of the ground, the weeds started growing. Sometimes you and I don't realize that those seeds of discontentment are there within us. They are in us, and it just needs an opportunity to grow. And if you and I don't realize and give it that power, give the man power, and see, the pride will grow. That's exactly, those are words of such wisdom that Abraham Lincoln might have said. I mean, that's why I think as Christians, even as Christians, we need to be twice as cautious as anybody else to check if these weeds are growing. I'm not talking about weed, but weeds. And did you know that Daniel chapter 4 was not written by Daniel? It was written by Nebuchadnezzar himself. I think this is the only chapter that was written by a king that was not a Jew, I guess, right? So in the concluding verses, it says, "Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven." This is after his time on the ground as an animal, right? As a beast. For all his works are right and his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble. So that's the message that I want to bring here, right? God is able to humble even the prideful, right? He's able. You know why do you think he's able? I think he's able because he's the one who gives us breath. Isaiah 42:5 says, Thus says God the Lord, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and what comes from it, who gives breath to the people on it and spirit to those who walk in it. You see, Job 12:10 says, in his hand is the life of every living thing and the breath of all mankind. Acts 17:24-20, the God who made the world and everything in it, being the Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. He gives breath to us. Even the breath, even the air that you breathe on a daily basis is given by God. You know, you got to go to those countries where kids are, you go to Syria where, chemical weapons were deployed and kids were dying. They could not take a single breath because the air was contaminated. Hundreds and hundreds of kids died breathing the air that was contaminated by these chemicals. And you and I have not seen such a day. And I would like to thank God for such a day because I have not seen that yet. If he's not mindful about you and me for one day, I think we are gone. I think we need to realize that as Christians, we need to realize that. And that's, if we know that on a daily basis, then on a daily basis, I'll be thankful. I'll thank God for everything. I'll thank him for promotion. I'll thank him for a new house. I'll thank him for my wife, my children, everything that goes well in my life. The problem with the pride is when everything goes well, he says, I did this. And do you think he shows pride when he is not doing well? I think yes. When he's not doing well, you know what he says? I don't deserve this. I don't know why it's happening to me. I'm not, I deserve much better than this. These sufferings are not for me. They should not be for me. That is the kind of attitude that a pride man has. And as Christians, I think we should be reminded from this life of Uzziah and Nebuchadnezzar that pride will not take us anywhere. You can reach to the top of wherever you're trying to get, but from there, the only direction that you can go is down. You see, unless you have your eyes upon the one who created you. Finally, here are some signs of pride that I just wanted to. These are the things that Mark, robbed from me. So, the sign. I don't know where he got this slide from. I don't. So, you make yourself the center of attention. That is a sign you're proud. You're critical and judgmental of others. It's a sign that you're proud. You don't pray. You don't pray because you think you don't need God at all in your life. You are your favorite subject. Rings a bell? Anybody saying amen? You feel entitled. You feel entitled. You think everybody owes you everything, right? You think menial tasks are beneath you. You don't listen. Meaning to say, you don't like being told to. Hey, keep your advice to yourself, Daniel. God has placed those Daniels and those prophets, and maybe there's a Daniel that brought you to church, right? Maybe there's a Daniel that's trying to counsel you. Maybe there's a Daniel that's trying to say, you can't live like this. You can't be pride, you can't live with pride all your life. Maybe there's a Daniel that's telling you that pride is going to go before a fall, right? The way that it is going to take you is down. You're not going to climb up, right? You refuse to forgive because you never feel forgiven. You don't even know what forgiveness is. Like Mark was pointing out, unless you come to the cross, you will never know what humility is. My Lord, that God, he became flesh and he dwelt among men like you and me. He did not think it robbery to leave heaven's glory for